What's the difference between them and you? Well, they're probably smarter. They're not smarter. In fact, the average person is definitely not smarter than the rest of the world because they're average.
If anything, I would say we're dumber because we just don't take no for an answer. We just keep charging through
right,
bullshit.
Exactly.
What is going on, guys? Welcome to this episode of the Collecting Keys Real Estate Investing Podcast. Today it is Wednesday, and I am your host, Mike DeHaan, here with my co-host, Dan Austin. And on these Wednesday Mike and Dan shows, we talk about real estate investing, business, and whatever else we feel like for that week. So I will preface this by saying we are doing a little bit of a pre-record because I am leaving the country. So if there's something super relevant in the real estate space that happens in the end of August that we don't talk about, it's because we didn't know about it when we recorded this. So I apologize ahead of time. So, life happens. Even though we do this show 3 times a week, believe it or not, some of them are sometimes months old by the time they come out. So it's what happens when you have a plan. You have other shit to do.
That's news to me.
It actually gets kind of bad because we'll have some of them. We still have some that we recorded
the Mike and Dan shows are pretty. Those are pretty.
Yeah, the Mike and Dan shows we do week by week if we're in town. But some of the interviews, I had some that I haven't released that we probably should reschedule those people on, just because by the time it came, it was due for their episode to come out. A, our business was completely different. B, their business was completely different because they were also small entrepreneurs. And C, all of our tech had changed. So we would have had episodes with good sound quality, and then we would have just been going back in time to a really bad one. I'm we can't do that.
Yeah, you can't go backwards.
It's if there's a new episode of a TV show, but it's in 480p, all of a sudden, season 4, or episode 4, and season 4.
The actors don't know how to act yet.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's their first time, but it's partway through the entire series. It doesn't make any sense.
Right.
But I've thought about that because some of those people they did legitimately want their episode to come out, and so if you hear this and you're one of those people, I apologize. We'll get you back on here eventually.
Very sorry. So. Yeah, we went through a rash of recordings. 6?
Well, because we didn't.
We
didn't know what we were supposed to do. All everyone said when we started doing recordings, because if you're also very new to this, we went almost a whole year with no interviews, where it would just be me and Dan, and I am amazed that we did that for so long because now I think about how we kind of have to prep for this show, how tricky that is. But when we talked to different people, they were schedule a ton of interviews and just get them all in the books. So that way you don't ever have to worry about having to schedule someone last minute. And we did that. And we had we're booked out for 6 months. I think we did too many.
Yeah, I think we did too. It's getting kind of exhausting.
We're doing two a days, 4 days out of the week. But I don't know. We take big action.
I think what they probably meant was book up every week to have a recording for 6 months so that you don't have to worry about it and not book all 6 months.
Yeah, well, the thing was though, we were trying to get ahead of it because I was going to Africa for a month, and then we were going into the holidays, and you never know what that looks like. And so we were trying to plan ahead as much as we could. And I don't know. I think the key to doing anything successfully is you have to take massive action towards it, realize that you will probably do some things wrong, and you just learn for next time. That's fine.
Totally. Yeah, we're all about taking massive action without any thought through it. Just jump into it head first.
Yeah. I know it's funny. We had a meeting with the GoBundance CEO. So GoBundance is this higher net worth kind of, I don't know. It's it used to be higher net worth. Now lots of people have this net worth, but it's an entrepreneurship group. And we had a meeting with the CEO today who came and talked to our local tribe. And we were talking about how to set up business structures and all these sort of things, because our business, we're, have added the podcast, we have our wholesaling business, we have our instant investor coaching program, and everything's kind of mixed together. And so I was asking about how do we, look at bringing in incentives for employees and all this sort of stuff. And he made a comment that I was actually very flattered by, because I told him it was an absolute mess. He's I would rather it be a mess than you to be someone that's trying to get it so perfect before you start that you never actually do anything.
There's a lot of truth behind that. That's all of our businesses too. We'll figure out how to do that later. Let's just actually start monetizing and creating value.
Well, I think it's such a valuable comment, and that's where most people get stuck is they do the legwork to start a business. And this is a big thing in the Instant Investor program where I try to get people to be marketing and talking to leads as early as they possibly can. Whereas
that's why we called it Instant Investor instead of like, hey, build your business, build your brand, do all these things that don't really matter before you market, right? Like marketing is what makes money in this business.
Yeah, and the thing is, people get so tied up in exactly what we talked about, like the brand and like the business name, all sorts of things, but they don't even know if they want to do the business yet.
For sure.
And they like, especially in the off-market real estate world, I don't think people realize that you're signing up for a very exhausting business where you're going to be talking to weird, colorful people, right? You're going to be pulling your hair out. You're going to be like calling people 19 times without them answering, and then the 20th time they answer and they're your best friend, and you have to be able to perform and close at that moment, right? And a lot of people don't have the gusto for that, but they like the idea of the big checks and the buying discounted assets. So why would you go and make, I don't know, red bucket properties, and you get your logo off Fiverr, and you like do the whole thing, and you build your website, and then you call the first person, you're like, well, this is not for me.
You're like, I don't like talking to these people.
The first person told me to go F myself, so I guess I don't want to do this anymore.
So yeah, a lot of people too, it's like they worry super like a ton about their brand and like the name of the company. I'm like, first of all, unless you're trying to like take over an entire like local market, you're gonna have TV, radio, every type of marketing. So like you're trying to be omni-channel and like just be the brand name, which is quite challenging, and I don't know that it pays off. Most people aren't going to care what your company's name, so don't name it something that's like means something to you, because they don't care that it means something to you. Like you got to name it Red Bucket Properties or something that's at least like they see it, they're like, oh, okay, that's easy to say. Don't name it something super hard to say.
Well, it's funny you say that a lot too, where people are trying to make like puns and like different things. But anyway,
which I think some of the puns are good. Like what's dude's name? In
Baby
Kansas
Back
City,
Rehabs.
Baby Back. That's great. Like that's awesome. Like that's catchy. But like trying to like throw in like your kid's name with like a birth date in there, like all this weird stuff is like just don't do it.
But
just roll with it. Just be like we started out INW Properties.
Yeah,
that was it.
Which was a terrible name because there was also so INW stands for Inland Northwest, and we thought that was a common term, but people would all the time be like, what does that stand for? I'm like, you freaking live here. You've never heard the term the Inland Northwest before?
I know.
Anyway, point being though, taking massive action is the
massive
imperfect action, and being fully prepared that you're going to screw up, you're going to waste people's time, you're going to waste your time, you're going to waste money, and just accept that is all part of the investment process that you are making to build your next big thing. Super important. And I think for some reason, and I'm not sure why people have this shiny object syndrome, like classic traditional school has given us like the fear of failure because you don't really have the ability to learn by failing in school. But it's probably the biggest thing that I think prevents people from any sort of success.
That's a frustrating thing actually, is the concept of these like limiting beliefs and being afraid of failure. And this is super cliche, but really back to like on the limiting beliefs is like huge. Like trying to talk to folks that haven't like made the leap to entrepreneurship or to start their first rental property or to flip a house for the first time. Like you have people like Mike and I who are talking about it very publicly of like how you do this, like how can you successfully do these sorts of things. So there's just a ton of information out there. You could YouTube how to do everything on flipping houses or getting into real estate or entrepreneurship. But there's this limiting belief of like, oh, I can't do that. Well, why? And I was actually just talking to a close friend of mine about this, and like, why can't you do that right now? Well, these are the reasons why I can't do that. Like I could lose a ton of money doing this. I don't have the time to do this. Like all these things where it's like, those are all limiting beliefs because there are people in your exact situation doing that. What's the difference between them and you? Well, they're probably smarter. They're not smarter. In fact, the average person is definitely not smarter than the rest of the world because they're average.
If anything, I would say we're dumber because we just don't take no for an answer. Sure. We just keep charging through
exactly. Yes. Right, we're dumb. We're dumb enough to try things over and over again, right? And they all the other cliche is like you don't fail unless you quit, and that is super true. Though.
Yeah, I know it's an interesting thing. I mean, look at you throwing in the mindset stuff. You should go and like write a book.
I know. Well, yeah, I was just having that conversation. I was just like, man, that is so limiting.
So limiting.
I'm gonna write it, and I'm gonna get a foreword by Brandon.
Yeah, right. Yeah, get a foreword by Brandon Turner. But like Brandon Turner's actually your neighbor. It's a different Brandon Turner.
Right, it's a different Brandon Turner.
It's a very common name. I'm sure there's plenty of them out there.
Yeah.
And you can give it like a really snazzy name, like I don't know, what's something that would just be. You see so many names that I'm always like with books. I'm just like, I get it from the title.
I would call it matter undermined.
That's actually pretty good because that like kind of makes you think. But you always see these other ones, and like I understand what the book is about, and I got the gist of it literally just from reading the title.
Yeah, the who not how example.
I've given that one before. Yeah. Like
okay, read that title.
Or like what is it? The die was 0, or I just saw this other one on on social media. I have no idea who this guy is, but he was friend of a friend, kind of a thing. And he just wrote a book that's called like the 2-hour vacation test. You want to guess what that one is? It's a business book. No, sorry, not the 2-hour, the 2-week vacation test. You want to guess what that one's about?
Is this about taking a vacation for 2 weeks for somewhere you might want to live?
No, you're close. So it's about taking a vacation for 2 weeks and see if your business fails. And that's how you know if you are too involved in your business.
Oh, so sorry. I was thinking down a different path, but now that I'm in that context,
it makes perfect sense. And I have no idea. That's a good book. I don't know this guy, so if I just shit on somebody's friend, I'm sorry. But I just thought it was funny when I saw it. Either way, when it comes to learning new things, we need to apparently start a mastermind to teach title companies how to do their fucking job. Because we are in, I cannot, and we have a lot of transactions right now, to be fair, but I have. All of our years doing this, coming up on 40 years now, which is crazy, I have never been like seen such a disaster with so many title companies that just cannot figure out how to do anything on time.
Yeah, it's a communication issue.
And
then they get all upset when you try to ask them.
The thing that's crazy though is you're right about that, and like. It's not like we're trying to do really fast, complicated closings. All of our stuff is 30 to 40 days sometimes. We get them the stuff plenty early. They kind of have their direction. They know we're going to assign the contract. We connect them with the buyer. Everything's looking good. And then all of a sudden, 3 days before closing, they're just like, sorry, we can't do it. I'm like, why?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. And we've had a dozen deals get extended multiple weeks recently. And
which is wild.
It just doesn't make sense. And the thing is, when you're doing this off-market real estate, sellers are freaking weird, man. They get very sensitive to stuff like that.
Yeah, most of the time, they're the ones that the problem on the closing table. Lately, it hasn't really been their fault. It's been the title company specifically's issues.
Yeah, and I don't know why. It's like literally just them not doing their work at all.
Is it summertime transaction? Is it because we're in the dog days of summer and people are like, well, I'm so tired of not working all summer that I don't want to work.
This is how slow title companies are right now because the market's slowed down. So I signed for a deal that we sold yesterday. And literally when the lady called me to book the signing appointment, several years ago, it'd be like, okay, cool. So I only have time on Thursday between 8:30 and 8:45. Like you have to come at that window because we're fully booked. When she called me, she was like, whenever you want. I have nothing going on tomorrow.
We're wide open. Yeah, so they're not understaffed right now with deals. Yeah, I think it's just they're caught up in like the chill mode. I really do, and then I do think some of them just don't know what to do. Like they just don't know how to.
But the problem is we're working with people that we've done deals with before, and they've all just like maybe this is like slow COVID. You know how they said that the vaccines were going to start rotting everyone's brains? Maybe this is the start of it.
I didn't think about that. That's actually
so. It's all Bill Gates' fault. That's what I think. I'm gonna go tweet about it. Or no, I don't tweet. What do I X about it? What am I supposed to do now? I don't remember.
That's why I don't get that. I just use Threads now.
Do people still use that? I thought that was gone already.
I don't X anymore. Yeah. I mean, it makes sense though, and I think Mel Gibson's going to get wrapped up in this somehow too.
Right before Oprah does. Then Oprah will be next.
Yeah.
No, but for real, like the transaction piece of this business, like, I mean, we've even brought in like staff and stuff to help with it, and we have like a general process around it.
Yeah, we have a very robust system. Like we have a very robust system around transactions because at any given time we have 20 plus properties in escrow, right? And always new ones going in and out, whether that's canceling or closing contracts, right? So we always have fresh deals and things closing. And so we have a transaction coordinator specifically who has a very robust set of policies that she follows to make sure that the title company can't forget about our transaction. Yeah. Like her job essentially is to, once we get into escrow and all the paperwork is dialed in, is to make sure the file that we have for that property is always at the top of the stack. By saying, hey, can I get an update on this? Hey, I just want to make sure we're clear to close. Hey, do you need any documents from the seller?
Maybe that's the problem, is we're just like pissing them off. Like where
I definitely know we are pissing some of them off.
well, if they would give an update, everyone, because here's the thing that always pisses me off too is we'll get to like a week and a half from closing, and the seller calls us like, "I've heard nothing," and I'm like, and then we'll call back and like, "Oh well, you know, we left them a voicemail that they needed to like call us back, and then they didn't." And I'm like, "You just called them one time 2 weeks ago. Like, what is your problem? Doesn't make any sense."
Yeah, of course. No, it's silly. Yeah, we have definitely several like that should have been closed this week that probably won't. We have an interesting transaction, so this one will be fun. So this is a good one for some education too. The one we're doing down in Tennessee, that'll be a double close, but it's probably going to be a double close with two different title companies.
So let me give the frame for why this one happened. So off-market lead to a distressed house on a piece of land. Okay, seller was immediately skeptical of us, which is very common, you know, doing direct to seller. We're coming in with kind of like the we'll pay cash as is, whatever. There's a lot of bad actors in the space. So they were immediately skeptical. And so we sent our contract. They decided that they didn't like some of the verbiage, particularly around our inspection clauses and those sort of things, which is fine. But then here's what gets funny is they're like, okay, so I would feel more comfortable if my realtor does the contract. Okay. And then the realtor sends over a contract with the write-in verbiage that is word for word the same as our contract.
Like, they didn't cut and paste.
They pretty much did. Like it is literally the same, same low earnest money, same everything that we have. I think the only difference was that they wanted to use their own title company. Okay, which is always a little bit weird because we purposely choose title companies that are investor friendly and are, you know, they like are familiar with us and our process and our buyers and those sort of thing. And the thing that makes this really tricky in Tennessee is that there's now a lot of legal things around wholesaling and assignments that if you don't close it the right way, it doesn't really vibe. And as a result, a lot of title companies are not willing to do it. And also too, we don't necessarily want to alert this seller that we are signing the contract.
Right.
So we are doing, Dan, as you were saying there with the double closing.
Yeah. So which we don't usually care about using other people's title companies and all that sort of stuff, but there are problems and hoops that you kind of have to explain to them. That's why we like to use our title companies. But the issue is that the sellers they want us to be the end buyers, right? Which we technically are the end buyers, but we are marketing as a different company than the end buyer entity, right? But they don't understand that. So if we're assigning from Backyard Home Buyers, which is our marketing brand, to XYZ LLC, they're going to be upset because, like Mike said, they are skeptical. They want to know that we're buying it. So we have a contract with Backyard Home Buyers with this person. So because of this situation, we don't want to close the same title company on a double close, which typically would happen is they would close one file and take that money and transfer it over to the next file and essentially pay that previous debt off or pay whatever loan you had off if you got a hard money loan on your acquisition, and then they would just transfer all that over to the new file. So it's basically a purchase and sale agreement between us and the seller, and then another purchase and sale agreement between us and our end buyer, right? So that's easy, but we're going to do that two title companies. And because we don't want that title company to alert the sellers of this transaction the way it's going, again, just trying to avoid that conflict because we know sometimes it happens. So we're going to have to go to another title company, essentially run two closings concurrently, two purchase and sale agreements for the same property concurrently at two title companies. And then once one closes, we can now transfer over and close the other one probably the next day.
But the stuff that gets weird is the second one, we don't technically own the property while they're doing all that work. So it has to be someone that kind of gets that.
Right.
You know, and understand what's going to happen, which is a little bit nuanced. And so then what we'll have to do is we'll have to bring the funds to close and then just sell it immediately afterwards and we'll get the payoff. So we'll own the property for like, I don't know, a few hours hopefully, but maybe a little bit longer.
I'm gonna guess it'll probably be 24 to 72 because the other title company will need to get recorded documents from the county, and we'll probably find out that county is super slow down there and doesn't record except for like every Tuesday afternoon or something weird.
every Tuesday afternoon.
There are those nuances.
God, it's just never ending. Yeah.
So that'll be a fun one we can talk about. See how well that's probably one of the more complicated closes we've orchestrated for a seller that's somewhat reasonable.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing too, is the lady is pretty reasonable, which is a plus side. So it should be, you know, straightforward.
It must be a good deal.
Yeah.
I mean, to go through.
Well, I think it's getting at a pretty steep discount. It's like an abandoned house. And so he's one of our partners that we're selling the deal to down there. And there's major upside if you like make the house nice because it's on acreage, it's in like a green strip area, and then it's like it's in the South. So is Tennessee considered the South? I think it is. It's one of those like plantation era sort of houses, so it should be pretty cool. But
yeah, south of the Mason-Dixon line, I think that's how you can consider south, right?
I
don't even know where the Mason-Dixon line
I have
is.
no idea, but I'm sure there's people there that like get some beef about it. They're like, people that are in southern Georgia is like, Tennessee's not the South,
Yeah. Well, so Mason-Dixon line is basically the bottom of Pennsylvania. It's the south.
Bottom of Pennsylvania. So is Ohio?
Yeah.
Is that the South?
No. Well, it might jog over there, but I'm looking at this map, and I mean, West Virginia is below the Mason-Dixon line. It would like bumps up to it. Obviously, that's where it is on the map. But like, and I would consider that very, very south.
People from Florida, if you say they're from the South, they get very offended. They do not like that at all.
No. Yeah, you can't say that about Texans.
Well, Texans, are they too far over? What's the north-south limitation on that?
Or the east to west.
Oh yeah, that east to west. Yeah.
I would consider Texas. Because you don't have a south central. You just call them.
They're also
south.
just Texans.
Then you get west Texas though. You're like, that's southwest. That's just desert, flat rocks and dust.
They're also just Texans. That's their whole thing. I've never seen so much blind pride over something that makes no sense in my entire life. But
you do live adjacent to North Idaho.
That's true. North Idaho is even worse because, I mean,
because they want
they want to be Texas, and in North Idaho, literally half the people moved there in the last 18 months. So
yeah, because of blind pride.
Exactly. So that's our current dilemma, though, is this transaction situation that we're dealing with, and I'm curious to hear how other people deal with it too. So if you have a good strategy for how you handle volume transactions, you should shoot me a message on Instagram at Mike_invest because like it's such a reoccurring thing, and like that we had it dialed, and I don't know what's happened over the last 2 or 3 months, but it's just turned into an absolute freaking nightmare.
Yeah, timing. It's the moon cycle, I think, is part of it.
Yeah, because we're now in like a Capricorn cycle. I don't know what that fuck. I have no idea.
Yeah, we left Cancer. Now whatever's next, Gemini or I don't. Those are only two I know.
I have no idea. So besides that, we have been busy preparing for KeysCon, which I'm super excited about. So for our it's gonna be super fun. So we are doing our first in-person meetup. For this one, it is exclusively for Instant Investor members, and we are going to be doing a deep dive into their businesses, and hopefully by the end of it, they will all be boarding a rocket ship to explode into the new year. So we have a sick house that we rented down in Scottsdale that we're going to be putting on the event.
That place is badass. That's like a basketball
dude.
court,
The house sold for like $4.8 million like 6 months ago. And I don't know what the situation is because we got it for pretty cheap on Airbnb. I think primarily because they like just launched it on Airbnb, so they're trying to get.
Maybe we're one of those fools that got like the 30% discount for the first booking.
No, seriously though, I'm pretty sure that's what happened because they only had like three or four reviews, and they've only had a few stays there. So it's a sick house. We're bringing in a chef, and we're gonna do some awesome masterminding and different stuff. And it's a funny thing, like. Because we've been to so many of those events, and when you really start thinking about stuff that's like been good at past ones and like stuff that kind of hasn't, and then you try to like orchestrate things yourself, it's like so difficult to figure out how to frame things in a way that are like universally helpful and not just like what you selfishly want to do,
So true. Yeah. And it gets you out of like your element, because it's easy to get kind of caught up like the limiting mindset or the limiting beliefs, going back to that, is like you're sitting in your office. We typically, even when you're running this locally, you're running this business virtually, essentially, right? A lot of people have 1 to 2 to 3 people in the business. So you get kind of stuck in this like box that you're putting yourself in. And then when you get out of that box and you go and see other people that were putting themselves in the box, or the people that were working through the same problems, you're like, oh, okay, so this is common. It's not unique to me. And then on top of it, you build a network of people. Once you meet somebody in person like that you kind of go through this like shared suffering, like where you guys are sharing your problems and you're working through issues together. You now have a person, the next time you run into an issue, you're that much more comfortable picking up the phone and calling, like, hey man, I remember when we were in Scottsdale, or we were at that meetup and you were talking about blah, 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 and your follow-up systems. What did you do to fix that? Oh, let me share it with you. Now you kind of have that that network right there. And it just seems way more valuable than before.
And there's something about like that mutual interests when you have like a deep dive with people like this where you build really strong friendships in like a really quick time. Like Aaron Beal, who when this episode comes out, you guys probably heard him on Monday. It'll either be this Monday, or if you don't know who I'm talking about, it'll be next Monday. But I met him the first time at a meetup like a couple years ago, and he instantly became one of like my best friends, and we've conversed on a very regular basis since then. But I've only seen him in person like 3 times ever, and it's but just like there's something about getting in a local environment where you are singularly focused on the same thing, you have similar ambitions, you have similar goals, like a lot of the social awkwardness of meeting people just doesn't even exist, right? And I mean, I think about that meetup we went to in Florida a couple of years ago, and the groups of people, because you're all driven by like the same business, same goals, are so weird. Like I remember.
Well, you have a very common base of you already talk about. Like you don't need to have the small talk to introduce each other. Like you have a common topic to talk about. Your business.
And it just starts it right away. And I mean, I remember hanging out there, and it was you, and it was me, and it was Drew Waird, who you guys heard talk about cash flow several months ago. If you haven't heard that episode, you should definitely check it out. I'll put the episode number in the notes below. And they were hanging out with this dude, Uchenna, that's like this huge ex-collegiate baby back rehabs football player, and then we have like a couple other people like a little older. There's like some women that are like of various age groups, and like if you were to look at us from a distance, you think that we were like some really weird corporate party, because there's like no similarities between anybody,
none.
But the funny thing is those are some of the most successful people that I know now, and from from a distance away, you never would have guessed that. So
totally. And a big difference, besides the fact that those are driven people that tend to get attracted to these types of events, without that event could have been a pivotal point for many people, becomes a pivotal point in their business where they were able to turn something around, or they were able to finally get the rocket ship like off the ground, right? They have the set of tools to do that, but having that like interaction and that like also just focused, like where all you're looking at is your business without any other distractions, and focused on you and how you can take your business to the next level. Something about that just is that accelerator, that spark that you need to do it, to get to that next level.
Absolutely. And I think that, people go to these meetups and different things, and sometimes I think people don't do it correctly, and they don't like capitalize on it. And the only reason it doesn't become a rocket ship for some people is because they do it sort of like passively. And I guess a big piece of advice I'll give to like the Instant Investor members who are attending, who will probably listen to this, is when you go to these events, go there not only to learn, but really to try and like give as much as you can. And that's where you really start to create value, because there's a funny thing about when you start like giving to people, they feel inclined to give back to you. And it's a responsibility, right? It's like a social thing that we all have. And all of a sudden, your world will open up with new opportunities. People will start to give you their ideas about what you're working on. And all it will take is 1 or 2 pieces of advice that you'll get from somebody that you probably weren't expecting to get, that can literally change the course of your entire life. And I think a big thing on top of that as well is when you wrap up those events, where most people, they kind of shoot themselves in the foot, is they have no like post-event plan for any sort of outreach or any sort of implementation of what they learned. And I always tell people that within the first 24 to 48 hours, you should follow up with the people that you had a good connection with, shoot them a text, email, phone call, whatever, and then take your action steps from that event, which if you're coming to KeysCon, we will be helping you set up those action steps, and make a schedule and a plan for how you're going to do them right away, and start them literally the day you get home. I don't care if it's a Saturday or a Sunday and you're exhausted. If you're going to go need to get home and hang out with your family, do it on the freaking plane. Like even if it's just you sitting with like a notebook or a Delta Airlines napkin, and just start writing down the shit that you're going to do. And doing that, like that exercise alone, will make all the money that you invest and all the time you invested in that event be like 10 times more valuable than if you had just gone there as a passive consumer.
Yeah, that's super valuable advice, because so many people, like especially if you've worked in corporate America before, they really just see those events when like your company sends you to like a corporate event. They see those as a place for them to get drunk, gorge themselves, network a little bit, and then go home. and they don't have anything to take back. And a big part of it is for most people, they don't actually in the corporate America have the ability to take what they learn in a conference and implement that in their company anyways, because it has to go through so many layers of management. When you're going to a company conference like this, where it's your company that's funding you to go, like everything's on the line, right? And so you have to at least show up thinking, I'm going to take one thing, even if I picked the wrong event or whatever, and I showed up and now I'm at the basket weaving event, how to grow a basket weaving business, but instead of KeysCon, you went to the wrong one. You could probably still take something. So take something from it, right? Take one thing from it. And like I said, everything's online. It's your company. So you get to go home and implement it right away, which is super cool, right? That to me is the coolest part about it. And you get to see the immediate results from implementing that thing you learn, and you can connect it right to that time you spent with, like you said, one person where you're giving and then they just gave back to you. And it's that one little, sometimes it's just like a nuance in how they say something that you already know.
Yeah, and you're so right. And there's like little things you're just like, why did I never think about it that way? But that just completely changed my worldview forever. So, you know, and here's the thing is doing that, it is work. It does take intention. It is a lot of times uncomfortable, especially when, you know, you enjoyed the after party on the last night and you are a little bit hungover and you're getting on the plane or you're hitting the car, whatever. But you need to have the discipline to, you know, put in that intentional thought and that intentional time to just gather everything that you learn. But either way, I'm super excited about it. Yeah. It'll be fun.
I'm getting pumped right now. So I was just talking about it. Like, I'm like,
it's going to be cool. So, if anyone does have an interest in KeysCon, though, we do technically have one spot still open. By the time this comes out, it'll probably be gone. But you should still hit us up on Instagram anyway, and maybe we will. Yeah. We should have like a contest or something. We should like open up one spot for like a not instant investor member.
That would be kind of cool, actually. I could get on board.
Maybe we'll figure it out when we record our next one. If we can like, I want to do something like silly. Remember we talked about doing this a while back, like the $10,000 challenge. About like who can figure out how to make $10,000 in 1 month. Here's what we're gonna do. Here's what we're gonna do. Okay, we'll piece this together in September when I'm back. But we'll do like the $10,000 challenge. So the rule is that you have to make 10 grand, not doing something that's like within your main business, right, or like in your W-2 or something like that. You have 1 month to do it, and the first person that does that and sends like proof and about like, you know, what they did, make me a video, do whatever, we'll bring you to KeysCon. I'll buy all your stuff. I'll buy your tickets and everything.
Damn, but they'll be 10 grand rich.
Exactly. They'll be very net positive at that point. Also, I know that no one's going to do it because everyone's going to be like, oh, that's too hard.
Yeah, to make 10,000.
So like how would you do it if I said you had to make 10 grand over the, you know, in the month of September, but you couldn't do it?
Already have a plan.
What's that? You already have a plan? You can't do real estate. It can't be with our business. It has to be something that's completely different.
Would not be with our business. Be totally different. So here's my plan. Hear me out, people. So I came up with this plan like this summer. So earlier this year, I did a big renovation on my backyard, right? Did a bunch of stuff to it, including building a new deck, like a backyard deck. It was pretty sizable. I got quotes all over the place, like all the way up to like 120,000 just to build my deck. And it's not that big of a deck. So don't think it's this massive deck. It's, you know, 30 foot by 15 feet or something like that. Anyways, I kind of was like, I'm not going to pay 120,000 for that. So I called our contractor that we have that does our rehabs on our properties, all that stuff. He came out, did a bunch of work. Anyways, long story short, what I figured out was all I have to do is create a website with a Google business account, right? And then get a person to design the postcard. I'm going to send postcards to our zip code where we live, which is, as Mike has self-proclaimed, an affluent area where people can pay money for decks like that. And then all I have to do is get one person to grab that mailer, pick up the phone, and have somebody answer it, a VA answer it, whatever, schedule a booking, send our contractor over there to give us a quote, give me the quote, what it's going to cost, and then I'll add $10,000 to it.
I mean, there you go. You should actually do this. I want to see it. You do it, and I will buy your tickets to KeysCon, Dan.
Oh, thank you. That's so sweet of you.
Yeah, first class, of course. Yeah. I don't fly in the back of the bus anymore.
But that's my plan, right? I could go get our contractor. And mind you, he is not in our business. He doesn't work for us anymore, like he did. But he's a guy that we have a good relationship with. He's done tons of renovations for us. We just happen to we're not flipping houses right now, or have any major. Well, we might have have him do some renovations. We'll see. Yeah, just go get that quote and then essentially arbitrage that, because I'm not going to do it. Like, I can't build the deck. He can though, and he has a price, and then the customers have a price that they'll pay, and so I'm just going to arbitrage the difference between that. And you might ask, well, why doesn't he just start a deck building business? Absolutely, he probably will after the first times he figures out that I made all the money. But he's also not the kind of guy that wants to start a business. He's already told us that. He just wants to do his thing and renovate houses like he does. He does like lake homes for people now. That's kind of what he's doing. He's loving it. He's up on a lake in the summertime, remodeling people's houses. He doesn't want to do anything more than that. So if I show up and say, hey, give me a bid on this, he has no problem doing it.
I love it. Let's do it. That sounds like the, Keys contractors. I don't know.
There you go. I like that, Keys contractors. So anyhow, if I can think of that, my little brain can think of that immediately based on a problem I was trying to solve for myself. I guarantee you there's people out there that can solve thousands of problems. And the limiting belief is that, well, if it was that easy, a contractor would do it. Absolutely, there are contractors doing it. But there's also contractors out there that don't want to market. They don't want to run appointments. Like, they don't want to have to do the sales part of it. Like, they don't want to actually have a business. They just want to work for themselves, in quotations, and just show up and be able to do their thing. Same thing with why wholesaling works, because there's a lot of people out there that don't want to run the systems, that don't want to market to people, that don't want to walk through dirty houses and all that sort of stuff. And so all those people are called realtors, and everybody else is wholesaler. And so everybody just carves out their niche of the business, because there still are people that won't do it.
Perfect. I love it. It's a great place to finish right there. Awesome. Well, Dan just gave you the idea, guys. I'm sure that you all have, upper class neighborhoods where you live, whether or not it's your neighborhood or somebody else's neighborhood, where I guarantee you could do this exact same thing. It's really not that hard to make money, everybody.
If somebody does it, here's my thing. Use my business model. Do what I said, and we'll give you a free trip.
There you go. Yeah. Prove it right. Awesome. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. Hopefully you got some good value out of that. And seriously, if you've solved the freaking transaction problem, please, for the love of God, send me a message on Instagram at Mike_invest and tell me the secret, because it is driving me crazy. So you can send me a message there. You can hit up Dan at InvestorMan, Dan. And you should also share this podcast with anyone who finds it interesting. And I was thinking maybe we should bring like the reviews thing back, because we haven't done that in a while. Yeah,
yes. We got some new shirts too that we can hand out. I'm wearing one.
We
right
do,
now.
yeah.
I love this shirt. This is actually one of my favorites.
Yeah, we have a couple different Collecting Keys shirts. We have our basic one, and we have a Big Dan Energy shirt. We have an I'm Looking at Jets shirt that you can see Dan wearing on YouTube if you check us out there. And so if you leave us a 5-star review on iTunes and you take a screenshot and you send it to me on Instagram, I will send you a free shirt. I think we're at like 50 something right now. I will do this up until we get to 70 reviews. So that's 14 opportunities, I guess, to get this one. So does us a big favor, really helps us grow the show, and you get a free shirt out of it as well.
So let me ask you this before we go out. If I want to give the podcast a 5-star review, don't I just go into, like, if you're on iTunes and you listen on podcasts, isn't it like, I don't even know how to do it?
Yeah. I have an Android, so no, I don't.
Oh, well, that's could be a hiccup for some people. Maybe next time we'll give some instructions.
Yeah, you can do it on
you
can do it on Spotify too. Spotify also helps. Some people send Spotify reviews, but the iTunes ones are the ones that make us rank the most, because that's like the most used platform.
Yeah, go buy an iPhone and then specifically to give us a review.
Yeah, or just do it on. You can do it on iTunes online as well.
On Apple Podcasts online. Yeah.
So, anyways, guys, do that. It helps us out a ton, and we appreciate you all. We'll talk to you guys next week.
See y'all.